There is a particular sound that old government buildings make after midnight. Not loud, not dramatic, just a faint electrical murmur. Fluorescent tubes burning overhead, air moving through forgotten vents. The sound of paperwork sleeping in metal cabinets, thousands of pages, thousands of names, most of them never meant for public eyes. Some stamped secret, some stamped top secret. Some disappeared before anyone outside the room knew they existed. On certain nights, a man would sit beneath those lights and wonder whether a human mind could be opened the same way as a locked door. Not persuaded, not educated, opened. Outside, the Cold War settled over the world like frost. People worried about missiles, about borders, about armies. Inside of a handful of quiet offices, other questions were being asked. Questions without uniforms, questions without battlefields. Questions aimed inward, toward memory, toward fear, toward the fragile machinery behind a pair of human eyes. The project would eventually be known as MKUltra, a name that sounds almost sterile, like a serial number, like something stored in a drawer. Not something capable of following a person home. Not something capable of lingering in the dark long after the lights are switched off. The fear driving it was real. Washington believed hostile governments might be discovering new methods of interrogation, new methods of psychological control. There were reports from Korea, stories from Eastern Europe, rumors moving through intelligence circles like cold drafts beneath a door. But nothing seemed certain where the rumors ended and the facts began. But uncertainty has always been fertile soil for extraordinary decisions. A question took root. What if the mind itself could become a battlefield? What if loyalty could be erased? What if memories could be altered? What if a confession could be manufactured? What if a person could be reshaped from the inside out? Questions have weight. Enough of them gather together and they begin pulling institutions in strange directions. The illusion of control. The men who authorized these programs did not wake up believing they were villains. That is rarely how history works. Most arrived at work carrying briefcases, reading newspapers, drinking coffee that had gone lukewarm before noon. They attended meetings, reviewed reports, signed documents, and returned home. Outside their office windows, life continued as normal. Children walked to school. Couples argued over dinner. Neon signs flickered above city streets. The ordinary world kept breathing. Meanwhile, inside classified rooms, the search for control continued. The CIA funded experiments through universities, hospitals, research foundations, government contractors. Sometimes the researchers knew who was providing the money. Sometimes they did not. Money moved quietly, through grants, through front organizations, through paperwork, a trail that often disappeared beneath layers of bureaucracy. And at the center of much of it stood Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist, a spy master of poisons, a man fascinated by altered states of consciousness. He lived a life that often seemed filled with contradictions. Interested in folk dancing, interested in spirituality, interested in chemical compounds capable of dismantling a person's sense of reality. History leaves behind strange characters. Gottlieb may be one of its strangest. Under his direction, research expanded. Drugs, hypothesis, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, combinations of techniques designed to answer questions nobody had successfully answered before. How much pressure could a mind withstand? How fragile was identity? And how easily could perception be manipulated? The fluorescent lights continued humming, night after night, year after year, and somewhere another report was added to another file. Act 2. The Safe Houses of Shadows. Rain fell here too, not on government buildings, on apartment windows, on fire escapes, on the narrow streets of San Francisco. The city glowed softly after dark. Bars filled with conversation, taxi headlights drifted through the fog, music spilled from open doorways. Nothing about those nights appeared unusual. Well, that was part of the design. The apartments looked ordinary. A couch, a lamp, a drink poured into a glass, a smile at the door. Yet, behind certain walls, someone was watching. Operation Midnight Climax, one of the strangest chapters hidden inside of a larger story. The CIA rented safe houses in San Francisco, locations where unwitting individuals could be observed after being secretly dosed with LSD. The details sound almost fictional, which makes them difficult to absorb, yet they are part of the historical record. Female workers were used to bring men into the apartments. The guests believed they were entering an ordinary private encounter, a forgettable evening, another night in the city. Instead, their drinks were altered, their perceptions shifted, and their reactions became material for observation. Behind one-way mirrors, government personnel watched, taking notes, recording behavior, measuring confusion, measuring fear, measuring disorientation. The room on one side, the room on the other, separated by a sheet of glass, separated by knowledge. One person understood what was happening, the other did not. Try to picture the silence afterward. A man leaving the apartment, walking into the night air, feeling that something was wrong, unable to explain why. Streetlights reflecting in puddles, fog drifting between buildings, questions forming without answers. He would never know that this evening, his evening, had become a line in a government file, a case number, a data point. Thousands of lives brushed against the edges of these programs, some knowingly, most unknowingly. The scope of MKUltra stretched beyond the safe houses, far beyond them, hospitals, universities, correctional institutions, research centers. Human beings being subjects, sometimes volunteers, sometimes not. And over time, the line separating research from violation became increasingly difficult to locate. Not because nobody saw it, but because Institutions had a remarkable ability to normalize what would seem unthinkable elsewhere. One signature, one approval, one memo, one budget request. Piece by piece, the extraordinary disguises itself as routine. The paper trail. Nothing remains hidden forever. Not completely. Even buried things leave traces. A receipt. A memorandum. A funding request. A forgotten box pushed against the back wall of a records facility. The years moved on. Administrations changed. Presidents came and went. New crises arrived. Old secrets faded into the background. Then questions began surfacing. Journalists, investigators, congressional inquiries, people pulling on loose threads. The fabric started to tear, and behind the scenes, another sound emerged. The grinding roar of destruction. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered many MKUltra records destroyed. Files disappeared, documents vanished, years of activity fed into shredders. Paper turning into fragments, fragments turning into dust. A strange image, a government trying to erase evidence of its own memory. Yet, memory can be stubborn. Several years later, roughly 20,000 financial records were discovered, overlooked, missed, forgotten during the purge. The documents survived almost by accident. A neglected doorway left slightly open. Researchers stepped through, and what they found confirmed what many had only suspected. MKUltra was real. The experiments were real. The funding was real. The victims were real. Yet, even now, the picture remains incomplete. Many records are gone forever. Many participants never spoke publicly. Many details disappeared into the same darkness that created them, which leaves an uncomfortable reality. History is not a completed puzzle. It is a damaged one. Pieces missing, edges burned away, large sections lost. We study what remains and try to understand the shape of what is absent. The rain is still falling. The clock is still ticking. Somewhere, a fluorescent light is still humming above a forgotten filing cabinet. Most people will never read the surviving documents, never see the redactions, never trace the names. And perhaps this is why stories like this matter. Not because they belong to the past, but because every generation inherits its own version of secrecy, its own fears, its own justifications. The technology changes, the language changes, the paperwork changes. Human nature changes far more slowly. Fear still asks for certainty. Power still seeks control. And institutions still convince themselves that extraordinary measures are temporary, necessary, reasonable. Until years later, someone opens a box, finds a document, and realizes the darkness was larger than anyone admitted. Tonight, before sleep arrives, consider how precious an unaltered thought really is. A private memory, a private belief, a mind left entirely to itself. The rain will stop before morning. The clouds will move on. The city will awaken. People will make coffee, turn keys into locks, begin another ordinary day. And somewhere inside a warehouse, inside an archive, inside a forgotten cardboard box, A few surviving pages will continue waiting in silence, keeping watch over a story that is still not finished.